All right, Commissioners Blair and Castone, we are live streaming on YouTube and the meeting is being recorded. I turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first roundtable for our task force. My name is Tamara Blair. I'm a commissioner in 7D, and my single member district is 7D01. My co-chair is Joelle Castone from 7F07. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I just want to let you know how we appreciate you making time to engage with us this evening. It is truly a sacrifice. You could be spending time with your family, but you're here because you care. And we care too. So we're gonna do this together. This is a once in every 10-year process. And at the end of the day, what we want is for every community to feel like they come away from the table with a win when we're done with the whole process. So tonight's just the first of two, possibly three. We have to get to a single map that we agree on. So my co-chair, first of all, let's just, so everybody will know who's here on the task force. In case you're listening on your phone, we're just gonna take a quick minute and task force members just jump right in, introduce yourself. So people that are listening on the phone will kind of know who's representing their area that's here tonight. Any task force member, just kick it off and we'll keep going.
I'm
Said anybody. Hi, my name is Melissa Fries. I live in River Terrace. My ANC is 7D. My SMD is 7D04.
I'm Ashley Ruff, and I'm representing 7F07.
Marla Dean, representing 7B.
Tamika Bowden, representing 7F.
Caprice Cason, representing 7E.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Justin Leaney, representing 7D, and my single member district is 7D07, which consists of Paradise and Parkside.
Hi there, everyone. Max Richmond, 7C in Deanwood.
Patricia Stamper. I'm also 7C in Deanwood as well.
Mandela Deskins, 7C and Capitol View.
Do we have everybody?
Hi everyone, Nisha Petruni, 7D Kingman Park.
Good evening, everyone. Wendell Felder representing 7D as well.
Eric Rogers, 7B Hillcrest.
Hey there, everybody. It's Brian Alcorn representing ANC 6A and 6B, the parts that came over toward 7, about 9,439 residents.
Hey everybody, my name is Travis Swanson. I'm the commissioner for 7B03, which includes parts of Randall Highlands, Fairlawn, Twining, and DuPont Park, and I live in the Randall Highlands part of that SMD.
Did I miss anyone? Did we miss anyone? I think that's it. That's it for, let's see, who did I see? Our leader, Mayor, Councilmember Gray, did I see him on?
No, he's not with us this evening.
Okay, I thought I saw his name pop up.
Okay. Tamara Francis Campbell from the Hill East.
Oh, okay.
6B10.
I didn't see you up there in the corner.
I'm going to be on for a couple of minutes. I'm on my way to the airport, so I'm sorry I'm gonna have to leave you all very shortly.
Well, thank you for taking the time that you can. I'm going to turn this over now to my co-chair for a little bit of background and how we're going to proceed this evening. He'll just describe, how we're going to manage looking at all these maps tonight. with the task force.
Thank you, Co-Chair Commissioner Blair. Good evening once again, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here on this evening. Nice day for us, and we got a heavy listing before us. What I wanted to share with us today is that in the midst of us doing what we're doing, our rules of engagement and how we're going to pretty much tackle this project. The first thing I want to say is that we want to, if my memory serves correct, we have at least 10 maps that has been submitted thus far. And so with those 10 maps, what we want to do is we want to divide it up into 2 groups. One group will cover 5 maps, another group will cover another 5 maps. And what we'll do in each group will have allotment of 45 minutes to cover those, the things that we want to cover as it relates to those maps. And let me speak expressly about that. We want to make sure that we are sticking to the guidelines and the principle of redistricting. So we don't want to deviate from that. We also put together, Commissioner Blair and I put together some questions that reflects or highlights what that looks like. And so we want to be, if you will, somewhat little like sticking to that guideline prism that walk us through this here. And basically some of the things that we covered in our previous meeting, we talked about natural boundaries. We talked about keeping neighborhoods whole. We talked about civic organizations. And we want to be very intentional in making sure that we're taking those things into consideration. Another point I want to share is that, yes, our goal this evening is to try to have 2 maps. The stated 10 maps has been submitted. So we want to break it down to 2 maps that we can, at least from this roundtable session, that we can say we have 2 maps by which we can walk forward from those 2 maps. Another thing I want to cover in my notes here is, again, I said it before, but I did off of memory, but let me kind of stick to the script myself, right? I want to make sure that how did this map make use of existing natural or artificial boundaries, things that we cover at length amongst ourselves. That's representing to the parks, the roadways, the rivers. Also, again, the civic associations. And for each map, some portions are better than others. You know, we do recognize that, but again, sticking to that aim, that goal of trying to say, let's have 2 maps at the end of the session. And if needs be, we know we have our deadline where we must make our submission, but if we have to convene a 3rd time we know we have 2 round tables set up, but if we have to convene the 3rd time, we would do so based on everyone's perspective as relates to a vote, rather, whether or not we need a 3rd one. But I hope we may not. Also, we want to be, Commissioner Blair, we talked about this also at length, that we also want to be mindful of time too. We know that from our last session, we received very good, wholesome feedback about the time. And so we do want to be very considerate about that we don't spill over, right? So group 1, 45 minutes, group A or group 1, whatever, right? 45 minutes, and we divvy up those 10 maps, 5 maps at a time. Commissioner Blair, we didn't really get down to the nitty gritty and how we wanted to list our groups, but for that matter right there, I think we can, but we were able to, Chief of Staff Sheila Bunyan provide us with access to them after we can share now. So this time what I'm gonna do, I'll pass it back to you, Commissioner Blair.
Okay, thank you. What I've been doing is sitting here trying to divvy up who's here. Of course, I couldn't really divide it into 2 groups until I could see who's actually in attendance this evening. I'm almost there, but Group A, for no particular reason is it labeled A, but what I've tried to do is make sure like we don't have more than 2 people from a particular SMD from a particular ANC in the same group as much as possible, but that may not be possible because we have more representatives in some situations than others. Group A, I have representing 7C, Patricia Stamper, 7B, Travis Swanson, 7F, Ashley Ruff, 7D, Melissa Freese, 7B, Eric Rogers, 7C, Mandela Deskins, 7F, Tamika Bowden, and if Mr. Campbell is with us, 6B, Francis Campbell. I think I'm gonna end up missing someone, and that's not because I don't think you're important, it's just I'm trying to do this as we're starting the meeting. We'll get you on a list. Group B, Lee Wilson, representing 7E, Wendell Felder, 7D, Keith Towery, 7E, Brian Alcorn, 6A, Caprice Cason, 7E, Dr. Marla Dean, 7B, Max Richmond, 7C, Nisha Petruni, 7D. I'm missing one name. I can't figure out who it is. Who did I not?
That's me, Justin Leaney.
Justin
70.
Leaney, how could I miss you?
Oh, it's okay.
So
I'll go wherever you want me to go.
Justin, let's put you in the A group.
Sounds good.
Because I only see one 7D name that I listed in that group. Okay, there we have it. So we've got our two groups. This is not a test. All of the questions that Commissioner Castone and I will be asking are all related to, like he said, the principles and the other considerations that we are adding, you know, the civic association, that sort of thing. So we'll lead off with looking at the maps. When I looked at it, it looked like 10 maps were in there, but it was hard to tell because some people did 2 maps. One maybe looked like it was a practice map. So as we're doing this, some people that submitted maps are members of the public. So if we get to your map and we call your name, we may need you to let us know which map is your preferred map for us to review. So if we can, I'm asking that Chief of Staff Bunn is going to help us with pulling up maps this evening. And we also have Legislative Director Terrence Northliss, I believe, is out there too. Yeah, I see his name there.
So Terrence, I'm sorry, before you share the maps, Commissioner Blair, you said you wanted to share the guiding principles so that the public.
Yes, we want to do that. I forgot the guiding principles so that the public will know exactly what we're talking about. We'll pull that up. Okay. Because they're different principles for ANCs and other principles for S&Ds. They don't vary that much, but there is a difference.
Okay, give me 1 second so I can share my screen. Hold on. Let me make sure I get to what I'm supposed to get to. Okay. All right, so can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so Commissioner Blair, you tell me when to scroll or how you want me to do it, but these are the guidelines.
Okay, see if we can scroll to include the other considerations. I think there's only 2 on that list, so we want to just be able to see if we can get all of it.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
Yeah, because we don't need to talk about task force reports yet. So let's just start at the top with the principles for single member districts, which make up an ANC. Just in brief, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what we're looking at is equal representation, minority voting power. Compact and contiguous is really important in keeping communities together. Preserving communities of interest. And one of the things that we have to work around, as you'll see in the maps, is the whole census blocks. Now, I know that there are going to be maps that are pulled up and you're going to see a giant number in a particular location, but in some cases, it's the limitations of the system that will not allow us to break up those blocks, and we have to do a manual process. So we won't disqualify a map because it's kind of out of range, as long as there's an explanation and it can be adjusted manually. Going down to the principles of ANCs, you see there are some similarities, but a couple of differences. Compact and contiguous is what we're looking for. No irregular shapes, also known as gerrymandering in some circles, and preserving communities of interest. And then your ANC boundaries and ward boundaries, there's some particular things that come up in some cases where you can't have, for any particular reason, you must have a specific reason, but it's not normal to have an ANC to cross ward boundaries. And there's no specific number of single member districts. There's no specific number of ANCs, but at a minimum, I just will emphasize the minimum or maximum number of SMDs. There must be, well, let's say there's currently between 5 and 9 SMDs in a commission district-wide. That's the norm. So and that's for a reason. If you have less than 5 SMDs, it makes it difficult to function because you basically need 4 officers to act as an ANC. And 9 is kind of the max that we have right now in the district. When you get into the large numbers, things become a little tough to manage. But then the other considerations are things that have no legal bearing, but the council subcommittee saw that it was worth considering. And when they drew the ward boundaries, continuity and stability were important. And so we will acknowledge those and try to, work those into what we're doing as much as possible. And in terms of commissioners, how will the boundaries affect the commissioners? That remains to be seen. But one thing we are not purposefully doing is we're not drawing boundaries around any commissioner's home. That question came up, but we will stay away from that type of situation. It's all about the communities. It's the communities, the people in the communities. It's not about the commissioners and where they live and where the line should be drawn. So in addition to that, in our listening sessions, the civic associations made a plea for us to consider their boundaries. So we'll also be looking at that. How well do the boundaries of a particular map take into consideration the civic association boundaries? And then also what's in play already. We're using major roadways, railroad tracks, highways, rivers, to things that automatically create a boundary that we can't move. We really don't like splitting ANCs, say, on one side of the railroad track, or an ANC with SMDs on 2 sides of a major road, like, for instance, Minnesota Avenue. It's really kind of difficult sometimes, but we try to take that into consideration. So we may refer back to this occasionally as we're speaking, particularly once we ask a question, we may go back to it. So I've talked enough.
Commissioner Blair, you have 3 hands raised from your task force members. I saw Brian Alcorn, then I saw Keith Towery, and then I saw Justin Leaney.
Okay.
I lowered my hand, so it's okay. The others should go.
Brian Alcorn, you have a question?
Sure. Since I'm the newcomer here, and having looked at maps upon maps upon maps over the past couple of weeks, I just wanted to ask my Ward 7 neighbors, is it my correct understanding that as the ANCs are drawn right now within Ward 7, that each of the Ward 7 ANCs has precisely 7 seats per ANC? And if that's the case, is that just a happenstance or was that by design?
I'll try to answer that. That I think was purposefully done. I wasn't part of that 10 years ago. And unfortunately, we don't have any documentation to explain the reasoning for doing that way. I was made an inquiry about that, but they said there's nothing, just go ahead and do what you're gonna do. So there's no hard fast rule that it has to be 7 ANCs or it has to be 7 SMDs. It isn't, it's fluid. That's just something they chose to do 10 years ago.
Great,
I hope
thanks.
that answers your question.
Yeah, it seemed like a remarkable continuity. So, sometimes those things just happen and sometimes they don't, but thank you for that perspective.
Okay, next question. I saw, we had 2 hands left.
I think Keith was next.
Hey, Commissioner Blair, Chairwoman Blair.
How are
Hey,
you, sir?
I'm doing all right. I just kind of shared in the chat too with Co-Chair Caston. I was having some issues, and I think other people may have too. I actually emailed ERS, Help Desk, and IT. I've submitted maps, and they reverted back to like this weird state. I also had this very weird thing that happened where some of the populations became negative. And that is really, it throws off a lot of things. When I did cursory, did a review this morning again, and also this afternoon, I saw that same type of error on a few of the maps. So I just wonder what's going to happen. I envision, or I imagine that most people who did maps, they saved maps in a public place so we can all review them, but none of them actually were submitted because they would have had integrity issues. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there just for everybody's awareness with that particular issue. If we are looking at one of my maps, I got to go back to the drawing board, unfortunately, to try to get it to work again. And the other thing too, I wanted to ask, I know that today we're going to be looking at maps and we're going to be trying to come up with 2. But I'm hoping, can we just spend a little bit more time on just level setting in general? I think that some of the people that on the call and maybe even on our task force could just benefit from just hearing a few more different things, particularly like great map that Justin Leaney worked on for the Civic Association. People can kind of have an idea of that too. And even if there's a discussion about when we talk about what does contiguous mean, or even the major roadways or riverways, just so everybody's on the same page and people it's not left for their own interpretation. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Keith, for that. As we're having this conversation with the task force members, we're going to be looking at specific maps. And so when we're talking about contiguous and communities of interest, I think it's going to come up in the response. As far as the Civic Association, we can possibly pull that up so everyone will be able to see what we're talking about. Not every community has a civic association, but those that do, we have some maps for certain civic associations, and we have some just that are written out that, oh, there you go. That's a beautiful map. Thank you, Commissioner Leaney, for this. So you can see the areas that we were able to piece together where their civic association boundaries lie within Ward 7. And we can pull this up for reference when we get to a particular map to kind of make sure we're not, the problem is, let me explain about civic associations. A lot of our civic associations are very involved with multiple, they're having to attend and be involved with multiple ANCs, which can be taxing. And we're trying to, as best as possible, align our ANC boundaries so that we don't have civic associations in, let's say, having to attend 3 ANC meetings. That can be a lot, especially when some ANCs meet on the same night. You have to choose which one you're going to go to. So I hope that helps clarify how we're using civic association boundaries. This is, to my understanding, is their boundaries have never been considered before. And so we realize the importance that they play in terms of a lot of us as leaders in the community, commissioners, a lot of us got our start in civic associations. So I think we owe them this time around. Does that help explain a little bit better about boundaries, I hope?
I think so. If the goal of today is to kind of look at the maps and refer back to questions and kind of clear up any confusion, I think that's a great way. So just thank you for addressing that concern about just level setting. I appreciate that.
Okay, you're welcome. We haven't, let's say this. Yesterday, there were just a few maps. Today, there's a lot more maps in the system. And like I said, I can't really tell which ones are practice maps. So as we get to a map, I will call on whoever the creator of that map is. If they have more than one map, we're only going to review one at a time. It might even be that the second map gets reviewed in the second group. Just out of fairness, we don't want to spend half the meeting reviewing 3 maps from the same person in the same group. They'll get it reviewed eventually, but not 3 in a row. Unless there's some compelling reason why we need to do 3 in a row. There's always exceptions. I don't like to make hard, fast rules all the time, but there are exceptions.
Yeah, 3 more hands raised.
3 more hands.
I think Angela was next, followed by Nisha, followed by Justin.
All right. Thank you. Good evening again to everyone. This question was more a clarifying question as well. So I know that there are maps that folks have submitted. However, there were like a couple of different ideas about how many SMDs. So there were like some proposals for 11, some for 9, some for 7. And I was wondering, like, what is the process? So if we look at these maps and there are different amounts of SMDs, like there's different size ANCs first. Like, where is the space for us to come to a consensus on which size we want? Because I feel like that is maybe not a precursor to looking at MAC, but that's like a pretty important factor to deciding what kind of map we even want to look at. And I'm not sure that has been settled. So I'm a little bit like, that's why I didn't make any maps, because I was just like, I don't understand what I would be making. So
I don't think the number is a huge importance. When we're looking at maps, if you like the map because it's got 11 SMDs or in an ANC, then that's the map you will probably likely support. To put a number on it now eliminates everybody's map who doesn't meet that number. And I don't think that's fair at this point. We'll look at every map, and if you like maps that have, 7 SMDs, then that's the map you will support. That's my outlook. Commissioner Castone, do you have a differing outlook on things?
I think it was a great question, first and foremost. And I think he spoke for a lot of people. I'm looking at the chat. My perspective is that I think that, and I'm open for feedback too, that looking at the maps as a whole and then supporting the one that fits best as relates to your perspective. But as you were saying from the beginning, man, like, what am I doing? How many, that was some of me myself as a co-chair, I was thinking of that myself, like, so I definitely see that. But the stance that co-chairwoman Blair and I thought that would be feasible is that as we look at the maps and then we say, okay, well, this is the map that fits my overall perspective, if you will. I think this fits best. And then the ones that don't, we can start on the process of elimination. And so looking at the map from that standpoint, like kind of like the happy medium, if you will, like mainly like the overall objective is saying which maps best fits what we think is best for our ward. But again, like I say, great question, but that's my perspective on it.
Just to thank you both for that. I would ask or suggest that maybe we don't start with that, but we probably would want to put some time on this conversation for that, because it particularly matters with the way that we end up drawing the maps. Definitely around like the communities and the way that works out. So that's just, if we're gonna go with looking at maps first, I think that still has to be a conversation, because we're gonna have it in our small groups anyway. And I don't really feel comfortable having a smaller group ultimately making that decision. And if we come to different ones with different smaller groups, then we'll find ourselves back. So that's just to flag for you all that we should probably try to make space for that. Thank you.
I'll say this, there's multiple ideas, or we're basically running out of time. So we've got to come up with 2 maps. And at this point, it's just not fair to people who have already submitted maps for us to sit here and say, okay, we're going to vote tonight that we're going to have 12 SMDs. So that eliminates everybody's map except the one map that has 12 SMDs. We're not going to do that. It's just not fair. We're going to look at the principles of redistricting, and we're judging every map based on those set standards that are already in place, in addition to the couple of other ones that we added. This is kind of late in the day to be putting certain parameters on, or saying, oh, we're only going to allow maps that have 6 or 9 or any particular number. That's just my position on it. So if we want to bring up the maps and, or do I see, Nisha Petrini?
Yeah, thanks, Tamara. And I think I have one comment because it's related to my question. I wanted to come back to the point around if we saved a map for public view but weren't able to submit it, how will that be included in the groups that we're looking at tonight? Or how do I ask at some point to make sure that map can be included? Because actually it goes to the point you were just talking about. I think one of my concerns is that if we start looking at the maps, and most of the maps that have been submitted at this point show larger commissions with 9 to 11 SMDs or whatever the number is, are we already potentially only looking at a certain structure because we just don't have maps that show whether another structure of smaller commissions is possible? And I think that actually, supports the point you were just saying. We want to be equitable and look at the maps that have been submitted and not let that guide us. But I think one worry I have is that I intentionally made a map with an alternative view of more commissions that had less SDs, and I'm not sure if it's going to get a chance to be reviewed or looked at, and I just want that to be part of the conversation, so we're really looking at across all of the principles that we talked about at the beginning.
Let me take a stab at answering your question. We're looking at maps tonight. However, next week we'll do the same thing. So if your map is not saved for everybody to share it for everybody to view, that's it can be considered next week. But next week we have to have all maps after next, what is it, first? We can't do any new maps that are not in the system by let's say the day before, which is the 20th. We need every map so that we will have everything and no new additions. So the goal is two maps tonight, 2 maps on the 21st, and of those 4 maps, none of the 4 will be perfect. I doubt that very seriously. So we may end up with sections or some variation of a particular map. Did I answer all of that question, or?
I just wanted to clarify, Commissioner Blair, I did save it for public viewing. I was not able to submit it. So that was my concern. I think another question that came up, are all of the maps that we're looking at, have they only been submitted, or if people were saving for public view, does that still show up for us to look at in the groups that we're reviewing?
Well, once we open it up, I just went into the system a little bit before this meeting just to see how many maps I could tally up. And I think I tallied up about 10. I could be wrong on that number. But whatever type of map you submitted, whether it's from the perspective of multiple SMDs, 11 SMDs, 12 SMDs, or you have a different version, there is possibility or room to review both maps. So don't feel like you have to pick a map to be reviewed. You can do 2 maps, but we don't want to do 2 in the same session, meaning like in group A reviewing 2 maps or 3 maps from the same person. We want to maybe put one of those 2 maps in the B group. Does that help?
Commissioner Blair, I think her concern was whether or not once we go into the system, will we see her map? And we won't know that until
we won't know until we go in it. I don't know.
Yeah, so we won't know. So tonight we're going to display the map. So we're going to physically go into the system and hopefully we'll be able to see your map. If it's not there, then we know we have to do something differently, but we won't know until we get into the section of logging into the system and then displaying the maps from there. Does that help, Task Force Member Nisha?
Okay, I think multiple task force members maybe have the same question, so it seems like we'll just know once we get started, and then between now and our next meeting, if something goes wrong, we can troubleshoot it before. It seems like maybe that's what the right step is. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Great. I think that's a great segue to go into the maps now.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Caston, you had one other task force member with their hands up. I think that's Justin Leaney.
I have kind of 2 concerns here. One is we don't know what maps we actually have, and it sounds like we're going to be making decisions about maps tonight, eliminating maps. And my concern is that a lot of maps aren't going to overlap. They're going to specialize in certain parts of the ward. That's what I did. I didn't touch ANC 7E and 7B, for example, because I don't know those areas. So my concern would be making sure we actually talk about all the maps people send in, and B, that we shouldn't disqualify other people's work on other parts of the ward outright because they haven't touched other parts of the ward. That makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are, we'll see what's in there. Yesterday I went in there 2 maps. And so I looked at the 2 that I was able to find. Today, I just haven't had time to look at 10 maps. I mean, I just don't have that kind of time, and especially today. So we'll see what's in there.
Commissioner, I think just the important thing is that we get to talk about our maps. I think whether they're in one place from the others that's important is that we just get an opportunity to talk about them.
Oh, definitely. I mean, okay, we will look at the maps. That's what we're here for. So Chief of Staff Bunn, let's take a look and see what's in there.
Melissa had her hand raised.
Oh,
Right,
Melissa,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Melissa Freeze has her hand raised.
Just very quickly, because so are we eliminating or not? I'm seeing like crazy messages in the chat. Are we eliminating or not? And then what is the process for that? Is that simple majority? Is that pistols at dawn? How are we like doing this if we are eliminating, or are we eliminating?
We must eliminate maps. We are running out of time. There's no way we can get out of here tonight without eliminating maps. It has to happen.
Okay.
There might be
someone like Justin. Like I said, I've seen Justin's map. Justin's map specifically affect Justin and I. And so if I'm in a group with Mandla and Marla and a couple of other people, they're not going to give a flying whatever about it. So how are they going to vote on Justin's maps? And then you're going to have more than 2 maps, because his specifically is for 7D. It's this big. So that's where I think that's where everyone's concern is. Are we eliminating? Are we just going through? And then also what the process is. How are we doing this? Again, are we just doing simple majority in this group of 11 people, or how are we doing this?
We reviewed maps. Group A will review a different set of maps from Group B. And so the vote in Group A will eliminate maps. Group B will eliminate maps. So the votes are within the group. We'll end up with 2 maps, hopefully by the end of the evening. If not, we're going to have to add more meetings. So that's an option, but the goal is.
I think this is important enough, though, to add more meetings if we have to. I hate to say that because I have enough meetings as it is, but I think this is important enough. If maps aren't being submitted, I know I've talked to a couple of people and they're on this chat saying, outside the panelists saying, I submitted something and I don't see it in there, or it's really jacked up. So I don't know, that might be something as a group we might want to talk about, adding those meetings. But I mean, we don't have a lot of parameters to go on. Not even, like I said, are we just doing simple majority? Is that how we're eliminating, is simple majority? And like I said, we just don't have a lot of parameters to go on right now. So we're all kind of flying.
A simple majority is what we go with. If we look at a map, we get simple majority. That's how we're doing it. So let's at least take a look and see. We've spent an hour now and haven't looked at one map. Let's look at a map. Everything we're going to talk about, every question that's going to be asked centers around the principles of redistricting, so that every map is judged at the same level. If it's just covering 7D, then we look at the map. We're not going to just like throw it out, because I don't think, I can't hear you, Commissioner Leaney.
But co-chair, that is exactly what you're saying our process is. We're going to eliminate maps that we don't like.
We have to. What are we going to do?
But I think we need to have a process for reconciling maps, because these maps are made with different objectives. I don't think that we should be throwing out someone's map because, say, Commissioner Dean or Marla Dean there, Dr. Dean designed a map to address 7B issues, but didn't address other areas, right? So it doesn't make sense to do that just because someone else has put together a map that doesn't address that.
Well,
Commissioner Burke,
a map, hold on a second, hold on. A map that only addresses one area, we all are connected. So whatever boundaries are in a particular map are going to affect the boundaries of the area next to it.
The co-chair, I think what the issue is yes, but for example, my map specifically addressed 7D. I don't think that my map should be disqualified because I haven't addressed issues on the other side of the ward. I think those issues need to be addressed by people who live in those communities, not by people who live outside of those communities. So that's why I didn't touch a lot of areas outside my ward. Does that mean my maps are now not qualified to be included because I didn't address those?
And that's why I have a question. I guess I missed something. Are we trying to get down to one map per group and that will be the finalists, the 2 final maps? Is that what we're trying to get to tonight?
We're trying to get to 1 map per group. Okay, that's what the goal is. But if we have maps that are segmented, then it can't be 1 map per group. It becomes more difficult when we have people that only do a segment. It makes it nearly impossible to pick a map at that point. So we have to work in segments then. So we're gonna have to pretty much have a meeting every night for the next week is what's probably gonna happen.
Co-chair, what I may suggest, it may be that we need to have people work together. One of the things I've tried to do in this process is bring together people within a single ANC and collaborate across boundaries so that we can reconcile proposals. A process like that might be a good way to cover all the ground we need to cover because there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm very concerned that we're doing a process now where we're going to eliminate a lot of maps because one slightly better at the whole word, but doesn't address any of the issues affecting individual ANCs.
So what I'm just putting this question out here. What do you suggest, not you in particular, but what does anyone suggest the end goal be for tonight?
Well, I think we need to review maps for one thing. I don't think we should be eliminating anything at this point because there's too much confusion in the task force about what the requirements are, how big ANCs are. And I don't think there's been nearly enough conversation across the task force to sort of do the synergy that we need to do to create a map that's going to serve everyone.
Can I chime in too on a suggestion? I agree with Commissioner Lenny saying. I think that today we review the maps because we've asked people to submit. I think that's fine to review them just so we can see what people are thinking. I think that we should continue to level set, such as have the discussion such as how many SMDs are we thinking about, the benefits and pros to those things. I also think that we should even flag people, let people know what our understanding are of the major highways, the boundaries, and what we feel is contiguous or not. I think having that type of pre-meeting today, after we review some of the maps, is a great place to level set for everyone. And then when we meet in subsequent meetings, maybe we can start making more decisions.
And just from a facilitation perspective, I am seeing that we have a couple more hands that are raised by task force members. Brian Alcorn and Mandela Deskins.
Go right ahead. Whoever wants to go first.
Sure. Thanks. I just wanted to agree, with Mr. Linney. I can't reiterate precisely what he said, but I think that there are some more fundamental issues to be considered here first. I was not, as evidenced by my earlier question, I was sort of not prepared to even broach the issue of how many SMDs per ANC. I hadn't until that moment realized that there was uniformity in Ward 7, where for whatever reason, each ANC had 7 members. I come from an ANC structure that has a number that differs from our other neighboring ANC, and there is variation across the wards as to how many single member districts are in each ANC. Take a hypothetical Ward 5, for example. You might have an ANC with 4 single member districts, and then you might have an ANC with 7 or 8. And, the circumstances leading to that decision are presumably known by those who engaged in that process prior, which was the basis of my question, to sort of understand the Ward 7 thought. But, now the question that's going through my mind here too is, is this commission going to decide, is this task force going to decide, first fundamentally that there's a specific number of single member districts to be distributed among the ANCs and then move on from there? Or does the ANC structure in Ward 7 look like there would be, a 7Q with 4 members and a 7Z with 5 members, sort of that variation. So just coming to understand that knowledge too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
Can we hear from Mr. Felder, please?
I know Mandolin had his hand raised first, so I don't want to cut the line. I appreciate you, Co-Chair Castone. Mandolin.
I was just gonna add, you asked what was like, what did we want to get out? And I wanted to agree with Keith and Justin. And I just wanted to add, if we could get out of it, and I think that the way we were imagining this, if we can at least get out of this with like some clarity around what we want as far as like the size of the ANCs, that would be super helpful to me, because then we can spit out maps. But until we have clarity around that, there's just things that, especially for us, say in Capitol View or say Marshall Heights, 7E, 7C, like we're all the way at the end of the run. And so what happens with the total amount of SMDs and ANC directly affects how we can even draw our lines. And so if we can come out of this with that, then, sure, we can have tons of map, like we can at least cut this down at least to only like 1/3 or 1/4 of how many maps would be created if I created an 11-9 and a 7, or 2 or 3 of each one of those. So I guess that, like in my mind, if we meet, we do what Justin said, we do what Keith said, we kind of figure out sort of issues and concerns, work through some of them, come back and just make a clear decision about, like, most importantly, the size of the ANCs and like a vote of some sort or whatever the process will be. Then we can move forward with the next step. That's at least how it would make the most sense to me.
What do you propose should happen to John Public, who has submitted a map, and maybe his map has a different configuration other than 11 or 9 SMDs? So his map is already like eliminated because now we're making things that didn't exist when he did his map, now eliminates his map. Is that what you're saying?
My personal perspective on it is that we never worked that out in the first place. So basically, we were all submitting maps, but without that clarity, it would be very hard for any of our maps to be seen as like what would have been used at all. So, whoever made a map, say if we come together as a body and we decide, well, we're going to go with 9 or we're going to go with 7. So if your maps had 11, then obviously that would be eliminated. But as someone who made several maps that I didn't send because I wasn't clear on this, like, I don't think that's super difficult, right, to edit your map and like change it to fit. But I think without this being a clear decision, then if one group comes out with 9 and one group comes out with 11, or one group comes out with 7, one group comes out with 11, and we come back together, then somebody's maps are going in the trash anyway. So I think this will be a better way to kind of like help focus the way that we draw maps. So.
This is not a difficult decision. Why put limitations? Why put limitations on what anybody's configuration is of an SMD? It kind of forces a particular area to conform to something that may not be good for that area. Why can't we just have various sizes, and if a particular area decides that 7 is the right for their area, then that's what's right for their area. What's good for one area doesn't necessarily apply to another. So I totally disagree with trying to force fit every area of Ward 7 into a particular configuration. It might have, somebody thought it was a good idea 10 years ago, but the way communities are now, I think the communities should decide what is the right size for them. I don't want to, I just think it just oversteps too much to say, we're going to sit here and tell every aspect of Ward 7, every neighborhood, what the size of their commission should be. They might have done it 10 years ago.
That makes it even more important now that we don't do this elimination process, that we stay together and we look at all these maps, because
we can do that. We can do that.
Mandela specifically, they're in areas where they're cut in half or they're over a line where if Max decides he's going to take over this whole section, Mandela is like, okay, so now am I in 7E? And the same thing with, Benning Ridge, et cetera. So we should then stay together. If we're going to have non-conforming areas, we're going to have 4s and 5s and whatever, then we really should be staying together and looking at all the maps and judging the maps on, I guess, what works best. Because at this point, you're saying like, one can have 4 and one can have 5. Well, that's great. But for me, it doesn't matter. I have my SMD. It just matters on who I go with. But for some other places, it matters on real estate. It might be their community organization or their area, but they also might end up picking up this or that doesn't have a community organization or something like that. So we need to either stay together and look at all the maps and kind of figure out what's there, because you're kind of telling us that there are no parameters. There's no 11, 9, 5, 7.
There isn't.
It's just, so then we shouldn't be separating and throwing people's maps out. We should be looking at maps and saying, oh, well, that 5 worked out really well. And that 7 worked out really, the 11 looked pretty good though, but it was a little crazy. And we should be considering.
Can I excuse me, I just want to point out that there are some hands that are raised. We have Task Force Member Felder, Task Force Member Swanson, and Task Force Member Kaysen.
Thank you, Terrence. So Chairperson Blair, I know you asked the question, what are we trying to achieve during this evening's call? So this is my humble recommendation. I recognize that this is an arduous process and everyone on the call has devoted their time, energy, and effort to make sure that this redistricting process is successful. With that being said, the reality is the deadline to submit a recommendation to the council person is slowly but surely approaching. It's April. With that being said, the reality is we're not going to achieve our goal in a short amount of time if we don't meet as a task force separate of the public. There's 3 factors that should be considered during this process. Chairperson Blair and co-chairperson Costin has identified the guiding principles to the redistricting process. That's number 1. In addition to that, the mapping process in terms of the maps and the public input that the community has put into this process. And then most importantly, we need to take into consideration a common goal in which the task force is trying to achieve, which hasn't been identified. So with that being said, Chairperson Blair has sent out a variety of emails, and transparently speaking, some task force members have went cricket. So with that being said, I think we need to identify roles, especially considering the short amount of time that we have. We could blow everything up, right? But I think that a lot of work has went into this and we are in a good spot. But the reality is we need more commitment from the task force. So my recommendation is Chairperson Blair or Co-Chairperson Costin, if you guys following this meeting could send out a timeline going backwards, identifying times in which we as a task force can meet separate of the public to identify, number 1,
Can't do it.
We can't do it? Okay.
We cannot have closed meetings. Every meeting we have must be in public.
Understood. Well, not with the exception of it being closed, if we can send out additional calendar invites to kind of walk through this, I just think that's where we are in this process. So in the interest of time, I'll stop there. But I appreciate everyone's commitment to seeing this through.
Thank you, Commissioner Felder, for that input. Yeah, we are obligated by law to have meetings in public. We cannot have closed door sidebar meetings. And so if we want to take a look at the maps that are here, and we agree that we're going to schedule additional sessions, and again, we have to take into consideration, we have to give the public a certain number of days notification. So before we leave here tonight, we might as well schedule the next one, which would have to happen before the 21st, which means we're probably going to need to have a meeting, today's Monday, like Friday or Thursday. That's where we are with that. So are we going to look at any maps this evening?
I will note,
Commissioner Bush,
perspective that we have one more remaining task force member with a hand up.
Okay, one more. Is that Commissioner Swanson?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Blair. I just wanted to go a little bit off of what Mandela was saying. I do think it would be helpful to have a conversation to kind of see like what size commissions the task force is thinking. And I don't think that even if we were to conclude that we want 5, 7, 9, 11, I don't think that automatically disqualifies anybody's maps necessarily, because, you know, just because they maybe drew different commission sizes doesn't mean that those SMDs don't still work. And, you know, maybe the commission, it ends up being drawn just a little bit differently, but, you know, the SMDs that they drew still work. And that's where I think that it comes into what Justin was saying earlier, former Commissioner Linney, about reconciling the maps and not eliminating them. And that, you know, we see that there's value in all of these and we do a reconciliation. And I definitely respect your point that, you know, communities will know what's best for them, but we still will have to do a reconciliation because, for example, if in 7B, say we decided we want 9 and our neighbors 7E aren't looking to shrink, like, you know, if we're going to add 2 more seats, that space in those neighborhoods have to come from somewhere. They don't just appear. So I feel like there would still have to be a form of a reconciliation to say like, okay, well, if we both want 9, that's not going to work. So I do think that we still can have a conversation about commission sizes. That's not necessarily throwing people's maps away. Instead, it would just turn into a reconciliation to make those maps work and those SMDs that they have drawn, even if they're not, you know, if they draw commissions of 7 and we want commissions of 9, that doesn't mean their SMDs don't work. It just means that the SMD borders, or sorry, the commission borders get drawn a little differently. So I think there is a way to do this with a reconciliation approach, as just as Commissioner Linney had proposed, versus just a cut, you know, we want this one to come forward, not this one. So that's all. Thank you.
And from a facilitation perspective, we do have 4 more hands raised. We have Task Force Member Rogers, Task Force Member Kaysen, Co-Chair Caston, and Task Force Member Stamper.
Who have we not heard from? I don't think we've heard from Task Force Member Stamper. Let's work from right to left.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to reiterate what Max Richmond put in the chat. He said, number 1, let's review submitted maps, have some of those that didn't come up. Number 2, let's then have a convo about other things that didn't come up. And 3, let's schedule the next meeting, but let's not eliminate things. Let's reconcile. I'm all about not wasting time. It's 7:20. This meeting started at 6 o'clock. I would like to make a good use of that time. So I just wanted to reiterate and amplify what Max Richmond said. Thank you.
There are 2 remaining hands, Task Force Member Rogers and Task Force Member Kaysen.
Yeah, if I may jump in, I just want to say we all have said this over and over again. With the last comment that is made, I think that just makes sense. We start off by saying that we were going to get to, I was saying, elimination night. We heard from everyone, and it makes perfect sense what Mr. Max just stated, and that's what we need to do. Just we can make the review today. look at the maps. We don't want to squander the time and have the conversation about that. And we have to make sure before we conclude today that we schedule another meeting this week. I think we all said it. I don't know if that the other comments from the other task force member may be saying the same. I just want to put that out there. Commissioner Blair and I have been talking in the chat, so we're not opposed to that. I think that makes perfect sense. So, but yes, task force member Casey.
I had a question in reference to how many maps that you currently can see have been submitted by the public or the task force.
Last time I looked, it was about 10 maps. That's a combination of task force and public maps. Now, how many of those, it's difficult to tell whether someone did a map as a practice or an actual map. So that's something that the creator would have to clarify for us as we get to it.
So it wasn't on the creation of the map. It was, can you tell by what was submitted, how many came from the task force and how many came from the public?
I did not separate it out like that. I just went in to take a quick look. I did not determine, because some names are, initials and, that sort of thing. So it's 10 maps. Some people submitted 2 maps. That was the best I could discern.
So Commissioner Blair, there are no other hands raised. Terrence is ready to share his screen if you all are ready to jump into the maps.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Terrence, take it away.
This is a listing of the maps that have been shared with the public under the shared plans folder here. They are sortable, so we can sort by any of these headings here. So we can sort by owner, if that might be a little more indicative of the source of the map. It'll be listed by alphabetically here, if that would be useful. There's also description, created and modified date, and the actual name of the submitted map as well.
Okay, can we just kind of scroll through and see how many maps that we can confirm or try to confirm as to which ones are relative to Ward 7? I see we have 2 there from Commissioner Leaney. Are both of those relevant, or try to let us know what's going on there?
Sure thing. For the sake of time, the one that I would probably like to talk about is the 7D minimum adjustment map, which is probably the next one down.
Oh, so there's, okay.
Or somewhere in there.
You have 3 maps?
Let's see, it's not.
Or maybe only 3 of them showed up. Maybe there's a third
Yeah, it
one.
looks like if you sort by my name, they're probably all in there. Kind of went a little overboard. Sorry about that.
It could also be based on how you save it.
I had to resort it.
7D minimum adjustment map. So if we want to talk about mine first, if not, whatever.
Well, let's just go through and try to group them so we know what we're dealing with for this evening.
So I resorted to include all of them from everyone. So this is the top of the alphabetical list here by owner. 2C01. This looks like related to 7. This seems to mention Kingman.
Mr. Norflis, that if you look at the dates on that one, that appears to be a ward map.
That's from when we had the first discussion for overall redistricting in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the best way to do it is it's sorted by last modified date descending.
Or you could just ask folks if they have a map they want to share.
However you'd like to proceed, I'm ready.
Could you sort it by modified and just scroll down slowly just so that we can see the universe of what's there and then we can figure out what we want to do?
Kind of sub
Modified from current to last, so to 2022 down.
First one look like it's Tyrell. After that, it looks like you have Commissioner Leahy's.
Commissioner Blair, this is Francis Campbell. I just wanted to remind you that my map could not be saved in the tool, and I did send out to Ms. Bunn a copy of the map that we created.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Campbell. We will be sure to get that map out again to be considered. We will not forget you. I can promise you that.
All right, I'm going back out shortly.
I think that's it right now, Terrence.
Alrighty.
That's an old map right there.
Yeah, that's an old map. You already got it. Like by the time you got to like January 15th, that'd probably be a good cutoff.
Okay.
Else is old.
So is there one that I should pull up in particular?
Scroll on, because all of those are other wards.
Tyrell was the first one you saw when you resorted it by modification date. He was the very first one. Right there, the 7F and 7D across river ANCs.
And so as we're looking at these maps, we're still going to be asking questions relative to the principles of redistricting. We cannot get away from the principles of redistricting. That is our primary consideration, you know, whether it's 7 S&Ds or 15 S&Ds in an ANC, we still have those parameters to uphold.
And Commissioner Blair, Commissioner Holcomb is here in case you have any particular questions about his map.
Well, if he would just like to kind of briefly give us an explanation or how he chose or how this map was put together, how it looks in comparison. I don't know if he has civic associations, but those are the kind of questions we're going to be asking. Major boundaries, communities of interest, compact and contiguous. That's what we're looking at. Those questions.
Would you like
So
me
yes,
to,
where's Commissioner Holcomb? Where is he? Let's bring him in here to kind of give us an overview of what his map takes into consideration. And the task force members will ask questions about the map relative to, let's keep it relative to our principles of redistricting.
Can I say something while you're pulling Terrell forward? You know, we could have had a process where we took the principles, decided on the principles, and used those principles to even help people design maps to meet those principles. I think by not having some major points addressed through a principle discussion, we have maps that we're not sure what principles they were made on, so it's definitely very difficult to evaluate. So I know we're past that point, but the principle discussion probably should have happened first, and then people could have known where we land on those principles, and then they could have made maps to best align with those principles. Now I'm looking at a map and I don't know what were the principles used to make this map, and I'm going to retrofit principles on a map that may not have included any of those principles when they were being made.
Well, we'll know when we allow Commissioner Holcomb to, he may know about the principles of redistricting. We'll have to see what he has, how he came about the map. I'm not going to try to answer that for him. The principles.
That wasn't about Terrell, that was in general for any map, because we don't know, we're going to always have a spokesperson for each map. So that's what I'm just saying.
Well, I've been sharing with the task force principles of redistricting from day one. And as leaders in your community, I expect that you would share those widely. Now, the ones that apply to SMDs and ANCs, I just received those myself this past week. So there probably are maps that don't go into the amount of detail that we have now available as principles specifically for ANCs and SMDs. But I've been preaching principles from day one and multiple times.
And you have, and I agree with that. And this is no indictment on you and what you've tried to do. But even when you discuss, even when you have a set of principles, the interpretation of those principles needs to happen so that we have a common understanding, because people can read something but come to a very different understanding. And I think that's where we should have started and agreed on our understanding of each of those principles, and then allow people to move to map making.
Are we ready for Commissioner Holcomb?
Yes.
No, I don't. Hold on a second. I don't see him on here anymore.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It let me in. I want to say, in the interest of time, I know that the meeting tonight is supposed to go until 8 o'clock. I'm more than happy to work with a couple of other task force members who are more expertised in the map tool. Obviously, there are some aspects of the map that are not necessarily perfect, but my thinking was just to show what a potential going across the bridge, continuing current ANC dynamics could potentially look like. But again, in the interest of time, I'm more than happy to yield my time to allow opportunity to get to other maps.
So Commissioner Holcomb, from when you put together the map, the principles of redistricting wasn't something you were focused on?
No, incorrect.
Something you were focused on?
No, I was focused on principles of redistricting, as well as creating natural boundaries. Obviously within 7F, where we pick up currently is Grant Street, Grant and Minnesota Avenue, and maintaining that boundary where we end at East Capitol Street.
Do you consider the river a natural boundary?
In terms of separation?
Yes.
I do, but I think that it's more of a scenario basis. And explicitly with this, where the changing in terms of one side of the river, you have 7D picking up, and then the other side, you have 7F picking up. But I do see it as a natural boundary.
Does this speak to compact and contiguous? Because one of the principles of redistricting says that compact and contiguous neighborhoods should be kept together and not separated. So one should be able to walk their entire, or not walk, but one should be able to travel their entire ANC without crossing into some other ANC. Was that something you looked at?
Yeah, that was something that I looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously understanding some of the principles that we have to follow. One of the things that I noticed with 7F01 is that there is a particular area that one side of the community or the neighborhood that is close to DC Prep is 7F, and then the other side is 7D. And so I did not take that into account. Again, I'm not the expert in this tool, but I did see, I believe, former Commissioner Leahy's map that I took a look at earlier today. I think he kind of incorporated that particular area that's right off of East Capitol Street, but that was something that I did take in consideration.
Was there any consideration given to the subcommittee's report for 2021 that 3 times mentioned that there's now enough population on the west side of the river to form its own commission? In addition, in the 2011 report, there's also mention that there's potentially the creation of a new ANC on the west side of the river.
So it is something that I've considered, and I have had various conversations with community members around this. I think one of the, in my sense, I think one of the dangers in drawing a new specific ANC on the other side of the river is that continued disconnect. When I testified before this task force a couple of weeks ago, I shared about being at a meeting that was in 7F, but was largely attended by community members who lived in 6B. And not that I felt folks were trying to single me out, but there is certainly, I think, a disconnect that is currently present when you consider the boundaries that separate the folks who have been in Ward 7 prior to the redistricting and the folks who are now coming into Ward 7. One aspect. And the other aspect, I think, is just thinking about ensuring that we are not diluting power and that relationships and work that commissions have done already is maintained. And so that was one of the things that I was thinking about with ANC 7F as it relates to the area of Hill East Reservation 13, and even also too thinking about the area of 7D with potential redevelopment on the horizon with the RFK Stadium site.
Commissioner Castone, do you have some questions?
No, I don't, Commissioner Blair. You answered all of them. Thank you, Commissioner Holcomb.
Yes, sir.
Can we pull up another map?
Do we get to ask questions?
Commissioner Blair, you have 2 task force members whose hands are raised.
If it's relative to the principles of redistricting, yes.
You have Dr. Marladine and Keith Tyree with their hands raised.
Whoever raised their hand first.
Keith, go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Holcomb, thank you for submitting your map. I had a question about your understanding of the definition of contiguous. I think that some may argue that if a river is considered a natural boundary, that that will make a particular area on either side non-contiguous. Is it your understanding or your feeling that if there's a road that connects 2 pieces of land, that it is therefore contiguous?
So I think we're talking about a technical definition, if I'm understanding your question correctly. So if we're talking about a technical definition, absolutely, that is my understanding. But I think when we're talking about the aspect of community, which is something that I've heard shared a number of times in tonight's meeting, I think that that's something that we've got to give consideration to. And that was the thought behind. Again, my piece is that in no way is this map perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But certainly I think it's important for us to be thinking about what community looks like as a ward as we welcome in new residents.
But I think what I'm hearing you saying that from your opinion, contiguous could include an area that is connected by like a land bridge, say like Benning Road or the East Capitol Bridge, that's contiguous in your eyes, and to your point about communities, that those communities, they are still communities, whether they're on one side of the river or the other side of the river. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
All right, thank you.
I see two more hands. I think Dr. Dean was next, I think. Is Dr. Dean next?
Yes, she was. Yes. And then after her, I see Brian Alcorn.
And then after Brian, I just want to make one observation.
Terrell, thank you for your map. I wanted to know if you could elucidate more on the issue of the experience you had and how that shaped this map. And I'm going to be really frank. I'm deeply concerned about creating and solidifying potential divisions, and not that we're working as a collective toward a better Ward 7. And some configurations will kind of support that and others won't. So could you talk about that experience you had at the meeting and how it facilitates or does not facilitate cohesiveness, issues of racial equity, economic empowerment, all those other kind of public policy issues that are supposed to be considered also in the principles? How will this impact public policy?
Great question, Dr. Dean. And I think the latter part shared around how this impacts public policy and even economic viability in terms of community opportunities and the like thereof. It was something that I took in consideration in looking at it. And certainly I understand, I've been listening attentively to each of the task force meetings, and I heard concerns that were shared from community members who live right there in that immediate community, and understanding that there are different concerns that may come up, that may arise, that may not be brought up in another ANC. But I think the reality of what the job of the commission is to do is to serve the interests of the particular residents that reside within that particular ANC. And I think that that's the intent from the perspective that in terms of what was submitted, that was the intent. But certainly I think that that experience that I had was enlightening in a sense, because it was still fresh. It was still a fairly new time in terms of 7F crossing the river. And I think that the DC jail was drawn into 7F, as well as DC General, which at the time was the homeless shelter. And so I think that there was a negative connotation in a sense that was placed on that particular area because of the jail and the homeless shelter. But then you had St. Caladas, which is where the particular meeting was held at. And so I think just in terms of racial equity and thinking about policy and the economic impact and understanding what that looks like, I think, again, it is important to think about maintaining maintaining structure in some sense of what has been proposed.
Who's Brian Alcorn?
Sure. Thank you for the map and for the opportunity to review this, review the perspective here. I just wanted to make sure I was reading it properly. So the proposal is to extend both 7F by adding 2 SMDs and 7D by adding 2 SMDs west of the river.
So the proposal, again, Brian, thank you. Great question.
Sure.
Certainly is not perfect, but just really was trying to give a sense of the idea of extending ANC 7D, 7F, or even potentially 7B, thinking about the boundary of Pennsylvania Avenue as an opportunity to think about as we go across the river. But that the logic behind it is identifying opportunity to connect the other side of the river to Ward 7, so that it's not siloed and that there doesn't feel that there's a sense of disconnect.
Got it. Okay. As it relates to Pennsylvania Avenue, there wouldn't really be an opportunity to make that connection though, right? Because 7 and 6 are split basically at the bridge and there's no connectivity beyond that. Is that right? You'd have to draw it up the sort of middle of the river as it is.
Yeah, you'd have to draw it. And so I recognize that it wouldn't necessarily be a natural connector. But I think overall, the point being that just showing what a potential opportunity could look like to extend ANC boundaries across the river is the logic that I had with the idea of it.
Got it. And then just looking at sort of the purple representation of 7F and comparing that to the 2013 map, I see that relatively corresponds, although you do lose a portion of what is presently 7F06 between the Anacostia River and, sorry, I'm not familiar with the northeast to southwest boulevard. That's sort of the western boundary of the purple block of 7F03.
This one right here.
But basically you're losing the area from 7F that is currently under the block that says 7B01. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I'm trying to look at it myself personally as well, I believe that there's an area, that currently one side is 7F already, the other side is 7B. And there were some community members who shared that they would prefer to be a bit cohesive opposed to having to cross the street to work with a different commissioner or commission.
Got it. Okay, now I see. Yeah, sorry, it's just hard to visualize here. So that's Minnesota. Okay. And then just as a general proposition, 7F and the current boundaries, you are sort of taking the approach of, the approach that the city had taken as it relates to not moving too much around and COVID and that sort of thing. Most of 7F's current SMDs are within the margin, although it looks like 7F04 is really, existing 7F04 is really low in terms of population, right? There was 1393 from the current census.
Yep.
It's not going to show on this map.
That's correct.
Okay. And then 6 was the highest with 2443, but relative to some of the other ANCs, that was a lesser variation. Got it. Okay, sorry. Stream of consciousness. Thank you for answering my questions.
Not a problem. Thank you for the questions.
At this point, I just want to interject a point that may not be known, especially to our viewing public. Currently, 7F and 7D are the largest commissions in terms of population. And in reference to 7D, it is already the most fragmented commission because of boundaries such as the river, a railroad track, a highway. I would be very cautious about extending that and making even a larger area of fragmentation. And I speak from a personal experience. I'm the commissioner of 7D01. So let's just keep that in mind, that it's not a pleasant situation to be disconnected like that and broken up into so many smaller areas. I see a hand, Mr. Rogers, Eric Rogers.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what I'm looking at. So this is really a concept piece, right? This isn't like for officially, and I'm sorry, because I'm in a separate meeting too, so I'm back and forth between, but as I understand it, this is Commissioner Holcomb is demonstrating something conceptually.
That's correct.
What a cross ANC, a cross river ANC would look like.
That is correct.
Okay.
It just as well could go the other way in terms of, let's say, Commission 7A is on the west side. 7A could reach across in the other direction. There's no particular reason why it has to go westbound.
No, understood.
Especially given the fragmentation of 7D already, and 7D and 7F are both the largest in terms of population in the ward.
No, I understand. And you had mentioned, Commissioner Blair, being across ANC in some of your experiences. Do you mind kind of recounting that?
You mean being separated?
The practical purposes, because I think, part of the principles that, I think that folks are trying to accomplish can be accomplished through other means. Maybe it's a cross-border ANC, maybe it's not. A cross-river ANC, maybe it's not. But if I'm not mistaken, the legislation that we will propose also has guiding principles for our ANCs, or some language there too, that goes with our report to the council. So for me, what I'm thinking and what I'm looking at as I'm understanding the arguments for cross-river ANCs or split ANCs is the practical purposes. When you have to go to DDOT, when you go to DCRA, when the Office of Planning comes, when you have an ABRA issue, the day-to-day stuff, what are your experiences in getting support for your individual neighborhood issues?
My individual neighborhood issues when for city services are pretty straightforward. What isn't straightforward is the fact that 7D01 has a historic area in it, which we're new as a historic district. And so my surrounding community, we have commissioners coming in from 6A, 6B who are familiar with historic issues and how to navigate, which would be extremely helpful for 7D01 to not be separated from those commissioners with that experience into a whole separate ANC. So, and just to go further, one of the complications of being separated is that, in my experience, and there are other commissioners, at least one on the call that was a commissioner before me, one of the complications is that when there are things that other commissioners may not be familiar with because it is so far removed from their individual SMDs, whereas any of the surrounding neighborhoods surrounding 7D01, they're all familiar with what happens on 19th Street and which way the traffic flows at what time of the day and the problems we have with 17th Street. It's all ingrained in us, whereas it's kind of a foreign concept, not to say that they can't learn it, but it just consumes a lot of time.
This is Tamika. I know there's a process to raising hands, but I would like to just say, as someone who's not spoken this evening, that it would be great if we could just see the maps, since that was a large part of the first hour. And I feel like we should take time to look at the map, since that's what we stressed. And I think all these opinions are great, but it would be just great just to see them. And then I think we can weigh in, since we did not set these boundaries up front, to say whether or not, East merging over and we didn't set any ground game, that we just take a time to look at the maps and maybe spend that I don't know how much longer we're on the call, but spend the remaining time just looking at the existing maps and not weighing in on the difficulties or some of the challenges, since we did not make those ground rules up front, nor do we want to make those, it sounds like, initially going forward.
No, well, we really wanted to focus on the principles of redistricting as they apply. Just kind of got off on a side topic.
From a facilitation perspective, in addition to Task Force Member Bowden's hand, Task Force Member Freeze's hand is up.
Bowden, Task Force Member Bowden.
I just spoke. I just would like to move on to the next map. I think we
okay.
need to set a time frame and just look at them, evaluate, move on versus deliberate. I feel like we're moving into deliberations.
Task Force Member Melissa Freeze.
Hi. I'm going to definitely cheer on Tamika about that. We do need to move on. As someone.
Oh, your audio went out.
Oh, did my audio go out? Is it back?
Yeah, it's back.
Oh, okay. As someone from like I said, geographically, I'm separated from everyone, and I'm separated by very large geographical boundaries. I have the river, I have Binning Road and Pepco. I have 295 and, and the railroad tracks, and there's nobody to my south, East Capitol Street. I have no one near me. So I kind of want to push back on the being separated thing. I understand about your historical district, but really that's also an internal fight that you guys are having about that, because now that it's set there, it's fairly easy and learnable. But
we lost you again.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's my, somebody's like dinging me. Thank you. We're just stuck, in there. And so, like I said, it's a pain being separated, and I understand where you want to go and everything like that. But I mean, for 70, as you said, is formidable. It's even everybody over in Mayfair, they're stuck and everything like that. So there's going to have to be some push on that separation for large roads, geographical boundaries and stuff like that, because somewhere along the line, like I said, I have to be somewhere. Am I going to be with the folks over the river? Am I going to be with the folks on the other side of the cancer plant? Where am I going to be? So
we love River Terrace. I love River Terrace. I walk River Terrace 2 or 3 times.
I love River Terrace too, but like I said, we do, like I said, there is that we have to talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but let's. I'm going to let that go and move forward. But
yeah, we're going to move on to another map.
That's the one. I could be short on this one. This map is sort of co-sponsored with the 7C task force members to address the request from Deanwood, and also addresses a couple other issues in 7D. The request from the Deanwood community was to align the 7C, 7D boundary along Kenilworth Avenue and Nanny Helen boroughs. Consequently, that would move 7D03 into 7C and would require 7D02, that's the Eastland Gardens and Mayfair SMD to integrate Kenilworth instead. The other change in this map is, or there's two other changes to this map. One is to create a new SMD for Paradise and Mayfair. That map or the mapping tool cannot render that SMD. I have a Google map that illustrates what that looks like. That would create two SMDs. Hold on, check my presentation here. That would create two SMDs that are slightly oversized. So the Paradise and Parkside SMD would have 2,187 member residents. The Mayfair and Paradise SMD would have 2,295. That unfortunately I think is unavoidable given the geography that we're dealing with in the area. Splitting up, making further adjustments would require splitting Mayfair and Paradise in a third time, which I think is extremely undesirable. The other change in the map is a change to 7D05 to reduce its population in order to meet the guidelines set in the law for single member districts. Other than that, the map doesn't make any major changes to the outlining sort of broader confines of 7D. I didn't make any adjustments to 7D01, not knowing what the west of the river situation would look like. However, my thinking is if ANC 7D were required to absorb SMDs from west of the river, that would likely result in us having to district out 7D05 and 7D06. My concern about that would be that it would significantly dilute the power of our SMDs east of the river, given the economic inequalities between the two sides of the river. I don't think that Kenilworth Parkside would come out well in that competition. I think we would struggle to shape the agenda for our own ANC. That's everything. I think we were just going to move on, or I can take questions too.
Yep. On to the next one.
This is a map by Bob Coomer.
Could you zoom in?
Bob is on the line somewhere. If we can find him.
Has he been
Yes,
promoted
he's
to a
here.
panelist?
We'll give him permission to talk. Hold on one second. Mr. Coomber,
There.
if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Did try to unmute. Can you hear?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Good. Yeah, thank you everybody for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. I am the former commissioner of 7D01, the Kingman Park neighborhood. I've preceded Commissioner Blair. And so this is our map that we developed here. If you look at the west side, it's the new 7A. We tried to make a commission of 8 commissioners. Spoke with Melissa Freeze a little bit. She and talked about the possibility of adding River Terrace, to this new theoretical commission. But and so that's really the focus of this map, is the west of the river portion, because that's kind of the area that I know. I tried to put together numbers and commissions on the east side of the river as well, but I wouldn't want to presume, but I did understand that one of the maps that was submitted that only included one of the commissions was people were concerned that it didn't include the entirety of the ward. So I tried to put something together for all commissions. So yeah, so we have River Terrace, and as Ms. Freeze was alluding to earlier, River Terrace is already kind of isolated by Benning Road, Kenilworth, and East Capitol, as well as the river. So it kind of made, I thought that the concerns expressed about ensuring that there is representation east of the river and west of the river within this ANC was helped out by River Terrace's participation, caucusing with 7A in this instance. And so there'd be 8 commissioners in this commission. If we could just zoom out just a little bit. Thank you. And then move a little bit north first, I guess, real quick. So north, we have on the northwest side, we have 7D 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is kind of the downtown area along Minnesota Avenue, between Minnesota Avenue and the tracks and the highway. We have these, and then 3 west of the highway commissions. And so you'd have 1 commission over here with those 4 folks. And then I'd heard interest from the Deanwood community north of East Capitol that they wanted to be in 1 commission. So I did my best to do that here. The numbers are a little low. So they're supposed to be up to 1,900 or so, and they drop below that slightly in some cases. But this would create 12 SMDs into 1 commission up here if that were of interest. But easily this could be split in 2 and obviously rearranged in different ways. And again, not something, I don't know what everybody in this area wants, but I just wanted to put it together if possible. And then if we could just move south really quickly, I can finish up. Thank you so much. So we have 7F kind of taking this south middle portion of the ward. You could theoretically also make an east of Benning commission here. Sorry, we do have a east of Benning commission here in 7E, then 7F taking over kind of the middle area here, and then 7B, the southern portion, though you could theoretically put a south of Pennsylvania commission down here if you wanted to make it smaller. Whatever individual communities are interested in, then obviously that's up to them. But or I'm hopeful that it's up to them. And yeah, that's about it. I'm happy to take questions or be quiet, whatever works for folks.
I see a hand, Mandela Deskins, task force member, 7C.
I have my hand up and my little fake yellow hand that I can't get the color changed. Mr. Comber, could you explain why you chose, I see that 7C had 12 SMDs, and it looks like some of the other commissions, E has, is that 8? Or no, it's only 5.
E has 5, right?
So could you give a little bit of explanation of why you chose such large differences between the sizes?
I saw that I just saw a geographic interest here in 7E, and I understood that north of East Capitol that there was an interest in having 1 larger ANC to represent most of Deanwood. So that was really just my basis for that. And again, really just kind of throwing stuff together that kind of made sense to me from a geographic standpoint, not any you know, not any deep sense of the neighborhoods because I just don't have it besides my own.
And then thank you. And then one thing for both co-chair Blair and Castone is there was a note in the chat from Max Richmond, which I shared, which was should an odd number of SMDs be a core principle? So maybe that's not something we know right this minute. But that was just something I wanted to put out there for when we start to discuss things.
Yeah, I mean, we can put it out there later, but the numbers just in general, if one commissioner is sick, then you got 4. So even number, odd number doesn't really give you any advantage or disadvantage.
There's a quick question about why I split up Kingman and Heritage Island. I just wanted to make sure that I was hopeful that splitting it up among SMDs, we could get several, you know, commissioners feel a certain amount of responsibility and interest in the islands, and so that's why I kind of try to split it up. There's an east of the river interest, a south of the stadium interest, and a north of the stadium interest, and they're very different. You know, I think they're very different perspectives. So having all those perspectives, I think, is helpful.
What? After 9 o'clock. What? Like 9:15.
Commissioner Blair, could I make a comment?
Sure. Is it a sure?
Sure.
I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry.
No problem. Bob, thanks for the map. It's an interesting perspective. You know, this is in the other direction where there have been some community requests and recommendations for a structure that is what you've drawn. The inclusion of River Terrace is also interesting based on the feedback from Ms. Fries a little bit earlier today, and you know, lived experience for me just a couple of days ago. I use the Benning Road Bridge frequently on bicycle and feel a good connectivity to River Terrace that way. However, having to visit Parkside over the weekend and driving, I felt the ease of access to River Terrace and then the distinct difficulty in getting to Parkside using a vehicle. It, as luck would have it, MapQuest suggested that I drive through Pepco's yard, which was
that suggestion sometimes.
Which was not a possibility given that the gate was closed and I wasn't feeling particularly aggressive. But just thank you for bringing this perspective. And yeah, thanks.
That's all on Commissioner Coomer's map. We'll move to the next one. And we're over time at this point, but we'll keep going until somebody says I can't take it anymore. I think we will probably shoot for like maybe, what is it, 8:30? But we have to, before we leave though, before we leave for the evening though, we will set a date for another meeting that will be prior to the 21st. So we won't leave without that.
Can I make a motion that we decide on that date and time now rather than move on to another map? Because that might take a while.
Either we're going to look at one map or we're going to end maps and talk about dates. I don't want to jump back and forth.
I support looking for a date now.
Then we're done looking at maps tonight.
No, wait, whoa. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have been muted. I should have been muted. Oh, okay. I'll go whatever everyone else.
I also want to say that like maybe next time we meet that I'm happy to work with someone, but like if we can organize the maps so we can be ready to look at them, because I think that whatever the instructions are, I think it just needs to be communicated clearly of what the expectations are and where we need to house these maps in a separate folder or some kind of way so we can get right to them and keep clicking.
As it relates to setting a date for our next convening, we only have before us the options of Thursday or Friday. So would the task force member be more inclined for a Thursday convening or a Friday convening? And I guess we can do this. If it doesn't matter, maybe we can go Thursday and reserve our Friday. Thursday at 6 p.m. Did that set well with the task force members?
If you want to chair it by yourself, I have another.
I'm sorry,
meeting.
Coach. Yeah.
If you want to chair it alone, you can do Thursday, but I have another commitment on Thursday evening.
Is Friday is better for you, Coach? If that's pleasing for the rest of the task force members, and giving us an opportunity for the community, the public be informed about it.
From a facilitation perspective, you have a hand raised from Task Force Member Petruni.
I was just going to echo, we have our Civic Association meeting for 7B01 on Thursday nights, and it looks like 7B also has something Thursdays, but I was going to offer if Thursday is the night we select, then I wanted to see if I could have a minute to talk about my map tonight, since I would have to miss the next task force meeting. But if Friday is the date, then I don't need to go tonight.
So Commissioner Blair, for facilitation purposes, this is Sheila Bunn from Councilmember Gray's office. We are absolutely here to support you all, but if it is going to be on a Friday, I would like to put in a request that we do it as early as possible on Friday, just because I have a great majority of my team on all of these calls. And on a Friday night, I try not to do meetings. So just to be respectful of the task force and their weekends and of my team, if we do choose Friday, if we could do as early as possible that works for folks, that would be much appreciated.
Task force members and co-chairs, have we considered doing a Saturday morning? That's a typical time for community meetings, say 10 o'clock.
So, not to interrupt again, Task Force Member Laney, this Saturday is going to be a problem from my office. I am teaching a class. Terrence will not be here. So you won't have the two of us to help with facilitation. Otherwise, great idea, but this Saturday would be an issue.
Can we keep the scheduled meetings for Monday and pick an additional date for next week?
It would probably take 3 additional meetings, or there would probably be 3 meetings next week, really, to get through all of the things we need to accomplish. I have no problem with that if we can come to an agreement that we're going to do 3 meetings in a week. So do I hear any comment or?
We have a half of
Commissioner Campbell?
Quick question, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is there any reason why, since you've already divided up the group into 2 groups, is there any reason why we can't talk offline within the group, share some of the maps that we've created? That way, when we come together, we'll have a better consensus of what it is that we're trying to accomplish if we follow the guidelines.
Only that we're supposed to have public meetings open to the public.
I'm not suggesting a meeting, but a discussion group. I mean, when we get to the meeting, then we can talk about those things that we kind of bantered about. I mean, but because we have spent an inordinate amount of time and we haven't gotten through our agenda. So I'm just saying, I mean, it's with all the divergence of opinions, isn't there some reason why we can't come together to discuss some of these things, at least to try to come to some type of agreement so that when we do come together, we have a more cohesive thought?
Let me ask that question to someone who might be more knowledgeable about whether we can technically meet separate outside of the public. I don't know if Chief of Staff Bond or Legislative Director Terrence Norflis maybe could shed some light on that for us, because I don't want to, violate any Open Meeting Act requirements that we have.
So and Terrence can correct me, I think if you're using the same premise as you did for your listening session where you had two representatives from each ANC do a presentation, they had to confer about what they were going to talk about and then made their presentation. So if it's done in that same vein, I don't see why that would be an issue. But whatever the fruits are of those discussions have to be shared with the larger group and with the public when you come back to your next meeting. So if you say Group A, come back to us with a consolidation of whatever maps they're supposed to look at, they have to have the opportunity to do that. And then they come to the full group and share those deliberations. So I don't see a problem with that happening.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Okay, so these meetings are not like decision-making meetings where there's any voting taking place relative
Correct.
to our requirements and what we need to accomplish here.
Correct. They're just consolidating and making sure everything is streamlined, the principles are understood, and coming back to the group and saying, we've looked at these 5 maps and here are our recommendations. And then you as a body decide what you want to do after that.
I mean, since you have already divided the groups, it would be helpful if you would send the groups, the names of the members in that particular group. That way we can sit down and discuss those things and maybe come back to the whole panel and say, this is what we've discussed. Again, this is what our recommendations are.
We can do that. I have the names scribbled out so I can make it a little more presentable and send it out in email. I will add myself and Commissioner Castone into one group, either A or B. We won't be in the same group, but A group or B group, because we as sitting commissioners have a vested interest in how this all works through.
I think it would be great as far as streaming timeline, as far as consolidating the time and being able to come up with a better consensus.
And Commissioner Blair, Task Force Member Meany has his hand raised.
Sure.
Yeah, I think Francis Campbell is right and Sheila's right. I think what we need to do is be really clear about what the expectations are going into next week's meeting. So I think, yeah, having everyone come together, and I'm sort of curious if maybe those groups aren't quite the groups we need, or maybe we need for our ANC groups to sort of come up with proposals first and then present them to the two groups. So that way we sort of simplify. I think one of our problems is we've got way too many different possibilities coming from different assumptions. I think the more we can sort of simplify those assumptions and pools where stuff's coming from on the task force, the easier the next couple of meetings are going to be. And then we could also, I think it'll be easier to make time for maps from the public as well.
I am going to ask my co-chair. I'm going to submit the names to him and work with, the wording of Commissioner Leahy's suggestion to get us where we need to go.
And Commissioner Blair, there's a comment in the chat from Task Force Member Melissa Freeze. There's no representative for ANC 7E on Group A. But I'm assuming that once you sit down and write it out, we'll figure that out, because there are a couple of task force members that are not on tonight. So
yeah, there's in my haste to make up a list, the list ended up with 7E, all 3 reps in the same group. So yeah, I'll look at that list again to make sure we don't have 3 reps in the same group.
And then Task Force Member Mandela has his hand raised, as well as, I'm sorry, we have 2 hands raised. Mandela and Dr. Dean.
Mr. Deskins, you're on.
Yep. So I just had a question about what exactly we're proposing, because I was hearing different people had different. Sorry, there's a car driving by. Okay, different people had different, slightly different ideas about what we will be doing between this time and the next meeting. And I just wanted to get some clarity around what exactly we were trying to do. And if it was like actually make some decisions. Yeah, so I just want to get clarity around what are we proposing that folks do when we're out of here. Sorry, that was my whole question.
With the last 2 suggestions, I don't know if they would like to restate or summarize. Go right ahead. Commissioner Leahy.
Sure. What I suggest is that the task force members who are representing each ANC sort of meet and get all their proposals together, and then we go to the groups that we have decided, present those, get the feedback, and then sort of, I don't know if we want to create 2 maps out of one for each group, or if we want to go back to the their ANC groups, and then present something. But that way we have a more limited number of maps that we're trying to propose and then reconcile. And then, of course, we could set aside time at the next meeting for maps from the public.
So I guess I wouldn't want to like labor this too much, because I know we're kind of making this happen on the fly. But if I could suggest an amended thing, maybe we could just agree to have looked at them so that we can have a more robust and clear conversation when we come back together. It strikes me a little like I'm a little apprehensive about the idea of us like making voting decisions on what map we're going to put forward in our own little subgroups, because we're not even clear on what those voting rules would be. And so that seems to make it a little bit more complicated. It's probably easier to just, at least we can talk about it and have some things to propose in the conversations, maybe like a readout of what we saw on each map and things that we wanted to discuss. But I'm just spitballing like everyone else. So I think I've done enough here. I'm going to go back on mute now.
No, that sounds good. And I think that also better hews to the rule that we shouldn't be making decisions in these groups.
Absolutely.
Mandela, I did not suggest that we make decisions during that. What I suggested is that we have a discussion. I mean, what has taken place tonight has been discussion. We haven't gotten to look at the map. So what I'm simply saying is that because of the 2 groups, that those two groups can look at the maps that those members of that group are looking at. We can discuss it. That way we have this esoteric conversation out of the way of what's taking place now. Not making any decisions, but at least we can kind of come to a consensus of what it is that we find attractive or unattractive in whatever map submissions there are, so that when we come back together, we have a better idea, a more concrete idea of what it is that we're proposing, versus wasting a lot of time doing what's taking place now and not being able to get to a cohesive decision.
And for the co-chairs, just looking at the list, we have 4 task force member hands that are raised. We have task force member Dr. Marley Dean, 3 hands now.
Yeah, I'm not, may I ask my question? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have task force member Swanson, task force member Deskins, who just spoke. And okay, so we'll take that hand down. So we have task force member Swanson and task force member Petruni with their hands up.
We'll just go left to right. Swanson. Oh, you're on, we can't hear you. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Chairwoman Blair. I just have a question that I saw in the chat a couple times, and I just got a text from a community member. So I just wanted to clarify, when is the final date that people can submit maps for our consideration?
Oh, now our dates are changing. Let me find the calendars here. We really need everybody's map by the, I think I had said the 21st. Is that what we had said, Commissioner Castone?
Correct.
Chair,
Mm-hmm.
Chair 21st?
That's how that was the next.
That sounds great. I just wanted to clarify for everybody listening so that they all knew what the deadline was.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
what we have to do is, once we whittle it down to, let's say, 3 or 4 maps, we still have to put it out for public consideration. That's part of what we need to do. And so we're pushing really tight. We have to potentially do a final vote like the 28th. That is like absolutely cutting it tight because the report is due on the 1st.
Can I ask that maps be due the day before at a time too, so that way we can actually get them?
I would actually, you mean prior to the 21st?
Yeah, cause today you said that you had you had 2 maps and then you got a bunch of maps. So can we say like 5 o'clock on a certain date or 3 o'clock on
We can do that. We can say the 19th. That's gonna put it kind of tight. If maps are due on the 19th, that'll be this Saturday.
Great. At what time? Noon? 1, 2,
6
3
p.m.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Commissioner Castone?
Wonderful.
If there's, speak up. If there's a reason we shouldn't. I just threw
You said the 19th at 6 p.m.?
19th, 6 p.m.
Right, thank you.
So Commissioner Blair, just for facilitation purposes, just want to make sure that all of the task force members know that they have to have an account on ESRI. So in order for folks to see those maps, they need to have an account on ESRI to go in to look at those various maps. So just wanted to remind folks, if you haven't created an account, please create one so you can go in and look at your maps by your deadline.
Yeah, even if you're not creating.
And task force member Petruni has her hand raised.
I just wanted to clarify for probably the 10th time, like everybody else, to make sure we're clear on what the next steps or deliverables are. So I think I heard we're going to meet in our separate groups as task force members to just simply discuss discuss and review like the current groups of maps that we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight, right? But then there might still be more maps that are submitted between time to discuss at our next public session. So I just wanted to echo, I think Ms. Bowden made this original suggestion and others said it too, if we could maybe structure the meeting in a way that allots, if we know we have 10 maps to go through, to allot 5 minutes per map, or whatever the appropriate amount of time is, just to make sure that we can talk about every map and at least view them, because it seems like that's a really important part of this process.
I think that's a good suggestion. Definitely being more time sensitive, which I saw in the chat from a lot of the comments. Moving forward, if we can land the plane now before we get to 9 o'clock, definitely, as co-chair Blair stated, the emails will be more explicit in the emails as it relates to the steps moving forward. I think no one has been disapproval of what Commissioner Campbell spoke about coming together. So just want to put that out there too. I heard that a lot, that we can pretty much be very, very clear in the emails what the next steps looking at. And we got from Chief of Staff Sheila Bunn that our Friday proposal and those dates seems not to line with her team. So that won't work, definitely not the weekend. So just talking all as we solidify a strict time frame, but definitely the email chat. I see you Task Force Member Dr. Dean.
Are you calling me?
I see you have your hands up.
Oh, okay, yes. Justin, Commissioner Lenny put in the chat a resource from Alyssa Silverman, and just glancing at that resource, other wards have had a lot more meetings than us, and that maybe we're trying to do too much. And we need to put on the calendar meetings and potential meetings for next week and solidify that now, because it seems like we're at 4 meetings and other wards are like at 8 and 9 meetings on this. So maybe we were trying to be a little bit too ambitious, but we are under the time constraint now. So can we start to think about next week, how many meetings we might need? And if we don't need them all, great, we can cancel. But can we start to put some potential besides just Monday? I think we might need more than just next to Monday.
Fair point. Commissioner Blair, do you co-chair? You have a perspective on that?
I don't. I'm gonna defer to you. You've been really quiet this evening. I've been talking too much. They don't want to hear me anymore.
No, I disagree. Everyone want to hear from you. Definitely, I would say I'm open. I'm definitely open to it. And this is, I like the democratic process from the very beginning. It was very understandable where we need to go at, that we were not going to make a decision tonight. That was clear in the beginning for me. I heard that loud and clear, and I was ready to adapt and adjust from that moment right there and do the review, set another date, and bam. So now moving forward, right, we got our 6 p.m. at nighttime. Let's do that. We got Monday. We can do a Tuesday and a Wednesday. I know this, I want to be too ambitious, right? But let's get them on the dates. Let's get on the calendar. Let's get on the calendar. And still, I also like what Mr. Campbell stated also, for that discussion, for those individuals who want to come together and say, hey, let's have a discussion prior to our set time frame, that we can pretty much at least have a talk, not a decision making, but sticking within the parameters of law. But however, we know we have, what's the day? I just lost my English. Today is, what is the day?
Yeah,
today's the 14th.
Yeah. Tuesday, right? No, pardon. Yeah. So anyway, if we can get for Wednesday and Monday, we have Monday on the calendar. Would you all go for? Can the task force members agree for a Tuesday and a Wednesday next week, or Wednesday at least a Wednesday, but a Tuesday and Wednesday at the same time frame? I'm seeing some head shakers.
Yeah, I think we need at least. I think we definitely need 2 meetings next week.
Okay, great.
If I could add, sorry for cutting you off, Co-Chair. I do understand we're approaching time. You know, I made this recommendation when I initially spoke, right, in terms of having additional meetings. This is my humble recommendation. Since we're scheduled to meet on Monday, I think that this gives an opportunity for you, Co-Chair Castone, as well as Chairperson Blair, to kind of send an email out with proposed times in which letting individuals from the task force know like what days we can meet in addition to the public meetings, as well as providing a calendar moving forward. I'm sorry, going backwards. So we know the recommendation has to be submitted to Councilmember Gray's office by April the 1st. We can kind of like work backwards. I think if we can like come to that consensus, I think that would probably be the best approach. And this is just a humble recommendation in the interest of time.
So Commissioner Blair, pardon the interruption. Mr. Felder, just to correct you, the report does not come to Councilmember Gray. The April 1st deadline is to the subcommittee, to the council subcommittee on redistricting. It doesn't come to Councilmember Gray. And I see there's some suggestions in the chat that we asked for an extension on that April 1st deadline. Just to be clear, there is not an extension. April 1st is the absolute drop dead deadline. We have the task, and this is not just for Ward 7, but all of the reports have to be in so that the subcommittee can consider those reports, have a markup on what has been recommended by each ward task force, and then they vote it out of committee and submit to the full council. And the council has already adjusted the dates because all of this has to be done in time for the June primary. So I just wanted to answer that question that was in the chat. No extensions, and everything is well timed out for a purpose. And the council has already shortened the amount of time on the back end to work with Board of Elections so that they can get everything in line. So not to add any more pressure to you, but just wanted to share that information.
Thank you, Chief of
Good
Staff.
information.
At this point, I am going to rewrite the list of the way we did the AB groups, and I'll put that in an email. I am going to call on my co-chair to collaborate with Commissioner Felder. Laney Campbell had given some great ideas and suggestions on what we need to do in these groups. And we'll take it from there. Dates, what did we decide on dates next week?
Co-Chair, we already have Monday.
We got Monday, but
Wednesday,
we're looking at
I think
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. We'll have
Wednesday or Tuesday and Wednesday.
I'm like Tuesday and Wednesday.
I think we're gonna need 3.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think we need 3. So let's do I won't say our, but I think you did the last poll. However you set it up, we'll do another poll, get a quick response so we can get out of this meeting tonight and not have to tally up who can come on what day. Just do the, set it up the way you did previously, send it out. We need a response back by whatever date you say.
Chair Blair, I suggested Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. I know that's a lot, but at least on a Saturday, we start early, we power through to the end. Having people late nights on a weekday is probably not as productive. So that's my suggestion, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday.
This next Saturday is the Ward 7 Dams meeting, just a FYI. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there on the 26th.
Okay,
We know we have Monday and Wednesday. We'll put out I'll put out a pool out so we can make a suggestion what that third day looks like with simplicity.
Yeah, but the poll will determine everything.
Okay.
You know.
And will the poll include any dates this week, or we're definitely kicking the next week to start this?
That's a great question.
Maybe you can include some.
If we can get an addition, the task force, man, we can get an addition date this week, then we won't be so hard pressed to getting 3. That way it'd be 2 this week and 2 next week. I think that'd be more equitable. I mean,
Commissioner Castone,
Yes.
if I could respectfully ask, can you include myself and Terrence in that doodle poll? Only because, again, I have a good majority on my team, and we love y'all, and we love Ward 7, so we won't be here for y'all, but I have to consider my team and other meetings that we have to do to cover 7, so you can include me in that poll so I can share with them so we can make sure that you have coverage. I would appreciate that.
Yes, I'm sorry for not doing so. Definitely.
No, that's fine. We are here to support, but again, I gotta make sure my team is good as well. I don't want them to kill me. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right, with that being stated, if anything else, Commissioner Co-Chair, I would like to motion to conclude our meeting and we speak in the chat, in the email thread.
Close it out. You got it, partner.
All right, everyone, have a great evening.
Mr. Castone, how much time do we have to give our Open Meetings Act notice? Is there a requirement on that?
I believe it's 2 days. Is that right? Chief of Staff Bunn, isn't it two days?
I am not sure on that part. Terrence might know, but we like to get the dates out as soon as possible. That's why my communications director is on as well. So as soon as you all come up with dates, then we will help to publicize that information. But
And
if
I
you're
only raise
planning,
it so that people will answer the doodle poll immediately so we can get them out, because I think we do have some constraints on time.
Yeah, I think it's 2 days. Let me see.
2 days. Yes. Okay.
I think it's 2.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful.
Is that coming out tonight or is this like tomorrow morning? I just need to know. 'Cause I'm
Tomorrow.
about to close the computer. Okay, great.
Yeah. Tomorrow, I think we work hard
Wanna be
enough
clear.
tonight. Enjoy your dinner, the kids.
Because
the
I will
weekend,
hold it up tonight if you want me to look at anything else.
Do this tomorrow.
Awesome.
All right, everyone. Wonderful. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.